Hi, everyone. I'm John Lux. I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Welcome to Film Florida Friday. Film Florida Fridays are interactive conversations about current topics, initiatives, and relationship building in Florida's screen production industry. Today, we're highlighting visual effects and animation. In a moment, our guests will introduce themselves, then I'll ask a few questions to get things going. During that time, we're going to ask that you keep your microphones on mute to avoid background noise. After we've gotten through our initial questions, we'll open it up to the audience for questions and conversations as we usually do. At that time, please use the hand raising function so we can call on you. We obviously want this to be conversational and interactive, but we also don't want everybody talking at the same time. We're going to ask everybody to keep their questions and comments brief in the interest of time and out of fairness to others that also want the opportunity. Film Florida Fridays, as always, are free, but we hope you'll consider donating $20.23 for our 2023 fundraising campaign. That donation link will be posted in the chat box throughout the discussion. You can also find it on our website. So with that, let's jump right in and have our panelists introduce themselves. Let's start with our visual effects artist. Victor, you go first.
Yes, absolutely. Good morning to everyone. First of all, so my name is Victor Rivas. I started in the film industry and post-production in 2005, and the small island called Puerto Rico. So I started in 3D animations and 2D animations, but the way I started working on that, it was the film called Matrix in 1999. So I decided to jump into film industry and technology to combine that together. So after 2005, starting to work in different kind of TV commercial, film industry, like a post-production, Puerto Rico first. And then I move on to a company, I did in Puerto Rico, called Barrera Filmica for 6 years. So I was the owner working different kind of project, and working project like Captain America, project like Walgreens and many others. So after 6 years, we hit by the Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. And so I lost the company and employees I had in that moment. And then I decided to create something new. So I decided to move on to another different directions and doing visual effects supervisions on set and post-production, and then move to ABC. So I have the opportunity to lead a lot of people over there for the visual effects. So after that, I moved on to Montreal, Canada, to work with different companies like MPC. So I started to make more networking with MPC and working with other kind of films project. Then after 1 year of 2019, around there, 2020, I decided to open a new company. So the two companies at that moment is called Lacupose. So I decided to move Lacupose for film production and post-production, but making something different, but using the technology like Victor Productions, technology like a motion capture, 3D scan, a lot of things. So that's given me the opportunity to work with, collaborate with different kind of companies like the Mill, working with the New Visions, Toyota, a lot of things over there. So after that, I jumped to start exploring more and more, in technology until now. So right now, I separate Lacupose from me. So right now, Lacupose is running for a new owner. So I decide to keep working in other areas as a director, as a visual effects supervisor as well, because I have a lot of coming projects into 2014. So that's something that I expect to give more opportunities, and that's my goal, for the next year.
Good, good. Ron, how about you?
My name is Ron Honn, and I'm a professor at Florida State University College of Motion Picture Arts. I teach compositing and visual effects, and I'm the visual effects supervisor for all of our student films. I got into the visual effects industry and motion graphics 30 years ago this year, actually, and started with a small company we founded in Santa Maria, California, called Cafe Effects. It was originally called Computer Cafe, but that's before there were the internet and there were actual computer cafes. So it was an unfortunate name choice, which we then changed to Cafe Effects. And over the years, we started working in broadcast design and then ventured into visual effects for several years, opened a small shop down in Los Angeles in Hollywood, and then bought Pacific Data Post back in 2002, and we turned that into a colorist and post facility called the Syndicate. And we continued to do that for 17 years. And then, of course, a lot of companies collapsed in the early 2000s, and Cafe FX was one of those as well. So we had a good 17-year run.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was a hard time for several facilities.
Yeah, very tough time at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now I'm teaching at Florida State. I've got the coolest job in the world. I get to work with the smartest, funniest, coolest human beings ever. And I love my job.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's move on to our animators. Jason, you go first.
Sure. So I'm Jason Maurer. I work with Ron, and which is cool, at FSU, College of Motion Picture Arts. I'm the head of animation there. I've been doing animation in one form or another since '94. I started on an Indigo 2 Extreme supercomputer. And for those of you guys who know what SGI is. And yeah, right. But I wasn't a computer programmer, I was an illustrator. So I had to learn C Shell and all that stuff, and coding shaders from scratch using SDL language, all that stuff. But I took my art and kind of transitioned that into making things move, which then eventually led to doing lots of commercial work, everything from architectural visualization to full-blown TV work, to work with Sci-Fi Channel, to then eventually getting the opportunity to direct a feature, or co-direct a feature called Delgo, which came out in 2008 and bombed, which sucked because the market went through the floor. But it was a great experience. And then from there, I kept doing freelance and decided I'd take a stab at teaching. So I ran about 8 years at SCAD, helped build their program from about 100 students to over 1,500 students when I left, and then decided to jump on the FSU bandwagon, principally because I only teach no more than 27 students a year. So each cohort is only 9 students. So it's a very selective program, which means I have a really awesome ability. We can really sculpt and work very, very closely with those students. So it's an awesome gig. Do a lot of freelance on the side, keep my skills sharp, playing with Unreal Engine, love it. So that's me in essence.
Great. Aaron, how about you?
Hi, hello everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, John, and everybody at Film Florida for inviting me. I appreciate it. Interesting fact, I think, Chris, is it 18 years ago, roughly, Chris Hummel and I actually worked together on a film called Journey to the Center of the Earth 3D. So that was, I think, 2006. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right.
Oh
I just remember being frostbitten in Montreal. So
yeah, that's right.
So
So
chasing the tax incentive, which is
that's right.
related.
This is like the first time that we're seeing each other since then, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, my name is Aaron Gilman. I am born in Montreal, so Victor, you've spent some time in my hometown. And I started relatively late as an animator. I was about 26 years old, already married. And I've had a long career now. I think it's 24 years in the animation industry. I spent some time at Tippett Studio in San Francisco. I had a brief transition into video games where I was an animation director at Ubisoft in Montreal and then at Electronic Arts. And then I made a big move as a senior animator to New Zealand, where I spent 8 years at Weta Digital as an animation supervisor, starting off on Avatar, and then working on about 14 different feature films down there. And that was an unbelievable experience, not only for me personally, raising my son there. My wife fell in love with New Zealand, and what was supposed to be a 1.5 years on Avatar ended up being 8, and it was a very amazing experience for us. But we decided it was time to go, and so I took a position as an animation director at DNEG in Vancouver, and I stayed at DNEG for 5 years, where I would eventually become the head of animation for the Vancouver studio. and had a brief time in London where I was the animation director on Pacific Rim, the second one, the not as successful one as the first one. Then I had an opportunity that I think is really once in a lifetime, and took my career in a very, very different direction. And that was that I was invited to join my best friend in the world, Jalil Sadul, who started Steamroller Animation, Steamroller Studios, along with Keith Lackey and Adam Maurer, who's actually in the audience here right now. And I went and joined the studio initially as the chief creative officer, which was really just sort of a guise to transition me into the CEO. My career has had a lot of leadership opportunities and sort of a development of a strong leadership philosophy. And Steamroller was a company that was going from sort of small to medium, now kind of big, and needed some sort of internal infrastructure and direction in its operational way of being, to couple that with what was already an incredible culture and dynamic of human beings. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 3 years, is really looking after the studio, new business and strategies, internal operations, and how we work with our staff. So that's me. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And finally, Chris.
I'm Chris Hummel. I think I've been in the industry probably 30, 35 years maybe. Started in Western New York right out of school. I internshiped at a small company called Oceana. And then basically what they were doing was color previs for the JPL. And we would do computer graphics at that time. Were done, again, on Silicon Graphics, or actually Tektronix computers, and sort of high-end visualization of architectural assets, and maybe some stuff for JPL that I can't talk about, but like it had to do with Mars at that time, and really large photomechanical manipulation of images and things like that. So it was mapping the surface of Mars, and then printing things on really large billboard size photographs. From there, I went in to do spinning logos on, at that time, Power Animator, on again, a little computer, not really little, it was an XD88, so really large Tektronix machine. And then I got into, at that time it was Wavefront, so all separate packages. It wasn't, there was a lot of graphics programming, hardcore programming that I'm kind of not used to, because I went to school for architectural design, not really programming. From there, I took the opportunity to go to Los Angeles. So I went to a company called Silly Wright, which is the remnants of Bob Abel building. Worked there for probably 3.5 years on some titles that I couldn't show my mom, like Hellraiser and things like that. But again, it was interesting because you're in sort of this, in the infancy of computer graphics in Los Angeles anyway, where most of it was done by post houses. Editel was there, Veritel was there. And then back here in Florida, I think the Post Group may have started then. Then Century 3 may have started then. And again, I couldn't figure it out because I wanted to go to Los Angeles anyway to work on films. And I had no idea that this was actually happening simultaneously in Central Florida as well. So, I'm from the East Coast, so I eventually wanted to get back. But I spent 10 years, maybe 11 years in Los Angeles, and worked for companies like Digital Domain, did some stuff at MetroLife, but it was sort of an outsource from ILM to MetroLife to back to things. So I've worked on several motion pictures, True Lies, a little bit of Introvert Vampire. I did a lot of previous stuff on, previous visualization of Thespian's digital characters at that time. But James Cameron didn't think the technology had caught up yet. And then all of those eventually became Avatar and stuff like that. So took the opportunity to work on a ride film when I was in Los Angeles. That was defunded fairly quickly, so I went to Disney, and I worked there for 8 years, and worked on supporting traditional animators in digital conversion and stuff like that. At that time, there was sort of this transition of traditional animation and film recording, and then there was this digital push. And so I mentored a lot of traditional animators and learned from them, and it was a wonderful experience. There was sort of this dichotomy and sort of this preconception that you were going to be replaced, which couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, I absolutely supported everybody within that package, and took the opportunity to be relocated to Central Florida, and I was at the Central Feature Animation Florida for 3.5 years before they closed in 03 or 04. And then now, that's where I met Aaron. Just was a nomadic tribe of animator, CG supervisor, visual effects supervisor all over the map. So basically chasing the tax incentive that is funded projects. So and now I'm currently I work for a small gaming company called Wayside. We sort of parted ways in the fall, and now I'm more involved in theme park design and stuff like that. So companies like HoloViz and stuff like that. So and Universal Creative and WDI and stuff like that. So.
Excellent, excellent. So hopefully everybody gets the sense of the type of panelists we have here today, which is why I was so excited to have this edition. So let's start kind of with the basics before we get in the weeds too far. Ron, when someone says visual effects, what do they mean? What's the current definition of visual effects?
Yeah, it's a good question. Sometimes people use it interchangeably with special effects. And special effects, just to sort of differentiate, special effects refer to techniques that captured effects in camera. So you could think of Harold Lloyd's film Safety Last in 1923, where he's hanging from a clock face over downtown Los Angeles and Hollywood in various locations. And that was all captured with a facade that was built on top of a building, but using forced perspective, they sort of cheat the idea that he's hanging out over the city. So that was all captured entirely on camera. Visual effects involve compositing elements as a post process. And so you could think of Mary Poppins as an example of using that old sodium vapor lighting system as a sort of a green screen of its time, and then compositing it using an optical printer. And then, of course, once computers came along and we're able to do that stuff digitally, then it opens up all sorts of possibilities for post processes. And that's how I would differentiate the two.
Cool. And Jason, let's go to your side of things. Animation. What's your definition of animation these days?
The classic is like, bringing things to life, right? Like, oh, it's about bringing things to life. And for me, which is true, so like, is a Marvel movie animated or is it visual effects? Like if the Hulk isn't real, right? There's always this huge debate about that. For me, animation is about subverting reality, right? It's about looking, if you can shoot it, why are you animating it? So that's wrong, like shooting it, putting it in front of some place that doesn't exist. Okay, great. You're trying to make it, in visual effects land, you're trying to make people believe that it's real. In animation, I want people to look at it and go, I can't believe that it's what it's you're making the impossible believable. And so the more we subvert it on a story level and on a visual level, the better. Like, so whatever we can do to tweak it, bend it, break it, stretch it, exaggerate it, to me, that's what makes our medium more special. I think you can do a lot with live action, but animation, I can literally do anything. Del Toro, right? Animation is cinema, so it's super huge that way.
Good. So Aaron, jump over to you. You mentioned you are now the CEO of Steamroller Studios, which is in Mount Dora, Florida, and Film Florida member. So we appreciate that very much. Tell us about the company and the evolution since you've been there.
Yeah, well, I wasn't there at the beginning. So Steamroller actually started 9 years ago. And it actually didn't start with any sort of motivated desire to build an animation studio. It actually started in a much more, I think, romantic sort of way, in the sense that it was 3 really good friends that left their, established industry jobs, DreamWorks, Weta, and came together really just to make a passion project. So, when you spend a lot of years in your career, working for the man, sometimes you just want to get out and do something that you really feel, you believe in. And so, Jalil Sadul, Keith Lackey, and Adam Maurer, they, got together in Florida, which is where some of their childhood homes were, and really just kind of put their heads down to make a video game. And that was really how Steamroller initially started, because as is very common with entrepreneurs, you run out of money. So when they ran out of money in the middle of making this video game, which they had never done before, I should mention, they really had a choice to either sort of pack up and go back to their industry career jobs, or try and really make a run of it. And so at that time, they were sort of sitting on a small team of animators, and started leveraging their contacts in the industry and seeing if they could pull in service work as a way of funding the IP investment, the video game. And that's really how Steamroller was born. It was really this sort of back and forth of stop working on the game, we need to pull in money on a service gig, get that money, put it into the game, work on the game, and back and forth and back and forth. And as time went by, that animation team just continued to grow. The reputation started to grow, and sort of the brand awareness started to get a lot of momentum. And now I joined 3 years ago. We were about 110. Now we're over 230. We've got staff in 40 countries around the world. Of course, our central office is in Florida, where we have a large team there. And that relationship, we're totally independently owned. We're self-funded. We don't have any external investors. We really sort of focus on this balance between pulling in funds through service work, which now is quite huge in the sense that we're working in visual effects, feature animation, game cinematics, and in-game animation all at the same time. And then, of course, we are actively and very aggressively investing in our own IP. We have a very strong vision for storytelling that we want the world to see. Of course, I'm representing with my Spice Frontier shirt here, and that is our pilot episode for our animated TV series that we hope the world will one day see. Yeah, that's where we're at now.
Excellent. Now, Chris, you worked on a number of titles that people would recognize. You mentioned a few, but also Batman Forever, Pink Panther, Lilo and Stitch, many others. Give us a fun on-set or in-production experience that you can share.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that I kind of when I heard that, I'm like, oh, that's interesting enough, because there's several of them, and especially when you're on a live action set, because we blended models and miniatures to computer graphics. So it was this blending of seamless integration. And so back in the day, like, you did use optical printers and stuff like that, because Boss Films was right down the street from Digital Domain. So we did a lot of models and miniatures, and one of the clever things was we had Arnold Schwarzenegger, steals a Harrier jet in True Lies and takes it down. Well, he acquires it, never mind. But he acquires this jet to fight terrorists in downtown Miami, go figure. And part of it was, there were multiple models from our model shop. It was actually a model shop that kind of came from ILM, theoretically, to build digital character, or actual maquettes and models and things like that we would then shoot practically and then blend those into CG. So one of the shots was actually him strafing the building, with bullet fire from the Harrier, and it was a little, probably a maquette, probably the size of a GI Joe, and he was in this thing on a turret, and we were shooting that practically. And then we had these little servos that would have him just look back real quickly, and it was hilarious, because you're talking a figure like Arnold Schwarzenegger, a little teeny model, a really cute little model, but when you saw it in the final cut, you're like, oh my God, because it goes so fast, and all this money and all this time spent building these really intricate models. They did the same thing for the blowing up the bridge in Key West, where they came in and blew it all up and stuff like that. And that was actually a scale model that I held my then 5-year-old son on and took a picture of him. And he was like a monster on this giant thing. And then I got yelled at for taking my son up to him on a set that hadn't been played yet. So, but yeah, something like that. I mean, all of those experiences are sort of what you, in hindsight, you're like, wow, that was really cool. And then, 20 years later, you're like, yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. And again, it was sort of this golden age. I don't know if that was actually a thing, When we made the transition to Disney, people were asking like, do you have an agent? And I'm like, no, I could negotiate my own rates. So there was just like feeding frenzy of, hey, you know how to do this, come to my studio. Hey, you know how to do this. And, so there was the luxury of like, well, if you lose a job, you just walk across the street and get another one. So it's getting a little bit tighter these days.
Yeah.
Sort of a retrospective look. So.
And now you also have won the VES award for best visual effects in a special venue production for Despicable Me, Minion Mayhem 3D at the Universal Studios Florida, which I'm sure many people on this today have seen and visited. Talk about your work on the project and knowing that many people enjoy your work literally on a daily basis.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting mix because I went to Real Effects to work on an animated project there were animated shorts for Warner Brothers at that time that, they actually were CG characters, fully furred and haired and stuff like that. Wile E. Coyote, and there was a Tweety Bird and stuff like that. All of those classic characters that were now digital characters, CG characters. We transitioned to that to Despicable Me. And the IP was owned by, obviously, Illumination. And so I had a relationship with Illumination from my time at Digital Domain. So, what I did was I was CG supervisor, visual effects supervisor, and I slashed that because it's like, to me, if you're a VFX supervisor, you're also watching the budget and you're doing creative calls. CG supervisor is going to build the pipeline to support all the art. So, I ran all the technical directors in their individual departments. So modeling, look devs, rigging, and all those individual departments each had their own individual technical directors that supported the workflow. And the workflow is basically feeding a composite at the end that we pre-composited and then took to the venue physically on a hard drive. I would, hop on a plane on a Friday afternoon and be in the venue, our test venue on Universal property, projecting it, testing it. And it was, for the first 3 months, I was making squares look like squares and circles look like circles on a projected screen. And then asking, why is this orange, supposed to be red? And so it was like dialing in the projectors and stuff. So that was really sort of a unique experience for me. And I love it because, if you think about it, a feature film is 6 weeks maybe of entertainment sake, and then it goes to DVD or back in the day, or half inch. I don't know. I'm pretty old, so I have a lot of half inch things that I don't even have a player for. So, But if you think about it, people are enjoying your entertainment for entertainment's sake, and that's valuable because when I was at Disney, you saw your IP everywhere. Like if you develop a character like Lilo or whatever, like you will see that IP, even before the film comes out. And it's this machine in the background that makes you proud of walking the set or walking the parks. And like, because it starts with an idea and you were in the infancy of spawning that idea and making that a reality. So it's a very valuable asset, and I was really happy to work on those things. So.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very cool. Now, Jason, over to you. You've won an Emmy Award as an animator, and you're the head of animation at FSU, as you mentioned. Talk about the experience of teaching at FSU.
Teaching is awesome, cool, inspiring, engaging. It's, man, I think probably the best part is that it's sort of like a family. I mean, Ron can jump on that. We're kind of, for all the good and bad that's associated with families, but everyone like really pitches in, works together, mostly because I'm not dealing with 30 or 40 students per class. We're talking about like 9 at most, 9 students per cohort. Yeah. And so when you're talking about film or animated film, I could spend 45 minutes with a student and really get into and critiquing and thinking and discussing and having interplay with ideas. It's not the sage on the stage thing. It's not what you would consider like a typical like college experience. At least I don't think so. And so that was the big draw. It was huge, the biggest draw for me as a as an educator was that I was able to interface with my students on such a like a mentoring style level. You know, the programs, it's 3 years. They do all their liberal studies the first year. This is true for live action as well as visual effects as well as animation. They get all their liberal studies out of the way, and then for 3 years straight through summers they're with us. And so they're working on films. The animators, they do 2 principal films. They're all collaborative, which means they're all working in teams. They go through pretty much every position, and then they get to kind of specialize a little bit towards the tail end. And it works wonderful. It's just it's a great program. I teach there, so I highly recommend it. You know.
Now, Ron, let's stick with FSU for a minute. How have you been able to take the lessons from your professional life and help the next generation of animators, but also vice versa as you continue to do things on a contract basis?
Sure. And just to piggyback on everything that Jason said, this is the hardest job I've ever loved. Like we all work really hard here, students and faculty, and it's just a blast. When I introduce myself to a new group of students, I always tell them that essentially I'm going to hopefully allow you to benefit from the 30 years of dumb mistakes that I made, so that you will go make your own mistakes, but at least you won't have to repeat the ones that I did. And then the other thing is I try to teach sort of the science and the math behind compositing, because when I started out in '93, as I'm sure other folks can attest, it was kind of the Wild West back then. And my first computer was an Amiga 3000. We couldn't afford an SGI for years. It took a while before we got around to Silicon Graphics. But it was sort of learning as you go. And I would encounter people who would sort of show me which buttons to push. And they would always take the position that, well, every idiot knows that this is how this works. But nobody could explain the science behind it. And so since then, I'm finding that as I teach students to understand how the software and the hardware thinks, it makes them better problem solvers. And you know, it's part of this is innovating and problem solving on the fly. So I think my clunky experience over the years has hopefully allows me to teach them and help them develop their own sort of intellectual framework for understanding this process.
Interesting. Victor, you mentioned a couple of the titles you worked on: Captain America: Civil War, Mr. Mayor, Clifford the Big Red Dog, among some others. Give us an on-set or in-production experience that you know sticks out to you from your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the good part is, and I love this industry, is I started from the beginning. You know, in 2008, started doing runner. So that's helped me to understand each department, you know, step by step, to engage the opportunity to be a sub-BFF supervisor on time. So that's gives me the way to understand and how it works in each area and with the director and producer. So one of the experience I had with Captain America, starting with that, we took a lot of pictures on set, and that was in Santurce, Puerto Rico. So if you remember, the part of the Captain America is Brazil, is not Brazil, that's Puerto Rico. So we took a lot of pictures over there, 3D scan, starting for 4 a.m. and we end at 8 p.m. So we worked together with the BFF supervisor and said that they took in HDR, taking 3D layer, taking some texturing, and then we moved that to the post-production process. So that was something very cool, because we need to organize everything, you know, and to have excellent lighting and, you know, the reflections for, you know, for the post-production process. After that, we had the opportunity to work in different kind of TV commercial in Puerto Rico that sometime I had to, you know, like create this idea from the scratch, you know, and how to build the process for the productions. So when sometimes we don't have the, you know, the shot to have on set, sometimes we need to improvise, you know, to make something else using other kind of technologies, sometimes green screen, and then we can pause, we can combine that to have the final result. Also, with the experience in having the visual effects supervisor, I remember the meal, the mill was as well as something great that we work here in Orlando, Florida, and Jacksonville, and together. So we did like 2 weeks of doing a scouting. So in those 2 weeks of scouting, I was working with Brian Martin of the mill in that moment, and we create some a schedule, and we build everything to have excellent shots in during the day. So we use some crane to create some crowd simulation set where we took a lot of pictures about the actor to replicate everything on set. So that was a challenge sometimes because they don't have the this tracker point on set to do it, and they have like 10 minutes or less to create everything so quickly and to have the result. So we try to manage that, and I had this situation that I had to run with the client because the client wasn't set, and speaking with the process, say, hey, what's happening here? What's wrong with it? So I remember they called me every time, and I had to jump between the client and director to say, hey, everything's okay. We are doing this. We're using this camera. This is the reason, so on. And after that, I jumped to another films, film short films in 2021 as well, as a visual effects supervisor. That's the next year's the films come released to theaters, and I had the opportunity to lead 25 people on set to manage the visual effect with a green screen and using 2 cameras, to create this kind of 3D effect, at the same time simultaneously that we can later on use in post-production. And then after that, we started working with the post-production. We had around 65 artists that had the opportunity to lead, and then to manage all that. But that was the difficult part, because I had the situation that I had to manage all those artists and create something from using shotgun, using sometimes abstract, to combine all that artists, and using the VFX producer, the coordinator, and everyone is working, in the clouds. That's the situation. So, after the pandemic situation, everyone is, in different area. So we need to decide how we can manage this much better with a situation that sometimes some people have in Canada, others in California, others in Orlando, and we need to manage that correctly, to have the result and the dailies on time before the client asks it. So this is something that you need to manage that very quick, and to have the result on time. The other two or three TV episode that I managed recently was the Gilded Age. So the Gilded Age, I was responsible as compositing supervisor. That I work with Alchemy X, and I work with Marcus White as well. And I work in Racing Canon as a compositing supervisor as well with Bilali Mac of New York, and we work together to create different kind of using 3D, using some visual effects, and combining the color management, to have the result in the end. And also I helped them in the Evil TV episode as well for 3D process. So that's the good part, starting from the beginning, that helped me to understand each area, by department. And this is something I really love to do about the visual effects supervisor, because you're at the top, but you need to understand, it's not necessary to be an expert on everything, because that's the reason there is the artist. So the artist is the expert. They specialize in each area to create the result. But when you have those kind of experience, you can manage much better each area from scratch until the end result.
Yeah. Now you're preparing to make your directorial debut. What are you going to do, and how has your experience with visual effects helped you along the way and to get to the directing path?
Yeah, absolutely. That's give me the opportunity to understand when I went to become a director, to lead much better each area, and why my own experience with working with other directors and set and post-production, sometimes they don't have the idea on how to create some visual effects or how to create some animation. So having that experience in my own, I can understand much better how to communicate much better the idea with the post-production artist. So I can let them know, hey, we can do this and we cannot do this, and this is the reason why, and this is the reason, and that's much better to handle much better, the process between the director and between the artist, and you can have a better, in the end, you will have better result, and that's the idea. So combining together the technology, the visual effects, and the director, my own experience, I think that will be something beneficial for me for the next year. So the next year's in July 2024, sorry, around, I think we will be 27. Yeah, day 27 July, we're gonna film a short film that's gonna start. Short film it's called the Hot as a Pau. So if you enter to NDB, you will see that, and then when you jump to a feature film, it's called Tacto. So this Tacto is my baby, and why I have been working this film from 2015 with another writer. So this film, we're gonna combine the technology using the virtual production and 3D, but what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create something different using the 4D process. So it's the 4D process means that I want to create something without using the 3D glasses. So when you come to the theater, you can see everything on 3D without using the 3D glasses, and you can maybe using the VR in case you want you have your kids or your own, and you can use your own actor, and you can select that character like a video games, and you say you are into the movie, and you can say everything in 3D, in 360. So you can walk in with the actor, you can see everything in action. So right now there's a new technology is coming using the I think the AI, that you can take some pictures around and create the 3D aspects in real time. So we're going to use that method in the other method that we are working on to create that feeling, for the people and the industry. I want to to enjoy the film. So that is something that will be after the first short film, and that will be the feature film I want to make.
Cool. Sounds great. Chris, as we've talked about, you've been doing this a couple of years. So how has animation, the process of animation, changed over the years, and how's that impacted your approach to the work?
I think it's gotten a lot more efficient, obviously, to be able to do assets, no matter, even if they're animated assets or digital assets. The idea that you have to do dailies and then send them to the film lab, and then the next day you did dailies, and the DP was telling you that we're half a stop of red, and everybody's like tilting their head. So the whole digital paradigm helps filmmakers, obviously. But you still have the basis in what color theory is, and what good looks like, what animation stepping goes through, and stuff like that. So I think a lot of that is been sort of transition now into things like Unreal and Unity and things. The packages now are a little more easy to get up to speed, but you still have to have that basis and timing and sequencing and shadowing and using even if you had a maquette, you could hold it in your hand and still visualize that in 3D space rather than build it yourself. I think the advent, what we've been doing recently, very recently, is taking a 3D model, and I can't really tell you exactly what that 3D model is, but like the 3D model, and it actually has a digital twin that's in Unreal, and you can drive these things live. And what we really want to do, especially in theme parks, is drive, things like maybe a vehicle or maybe an animated figure or whatever through Unreal. Use that as the visualization tool, photorealistic visualization tool, by the way. So you can give other, live lighting cues, live everything, and then connect that to a venue. And whether the venue is, that's projected, or whether that venue is that's a ride vehicle moving around, or whether it's an animated figure moving around through a back-off controller. So the connectivity between Unreal, and these are all via UDP ports, so it's send and receive of information, right? That was sort of this aha moment that I had probably 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, at a company called iTech, where all we were doing was a very simple test of a little head, a little animatronic, and it was ironically enough hydraulic, which is terrible to control because it gets everything all over the place. But we were able to control this character live from Maya, and it clicked in my head at the time. Like, holy smokes, we could do almost anything through this paradigm. And I think that's a very exciting time. A lot of live show controls are happening with that. And the key that I had to get everybody used to was that this can be done safely. Because when you're moving people around, or you're moving things around people that are, 35 feet and they're dangerous, you want to do it safely. And that's, especially, there's 3 companies that are here in town that they're very concerned about safety, and everyone knows who they are. But each person in that department, will always push back, because that's their job, to make things safe. But we have the ability now to sort of, without, we have the ability now to actually scan the data and scan the area in real time. So, and with the fidelity of actually building those objects, or the fidelity of, like, if you have a large KUKA arm and you pick it up, you actually have that, so accurate that you could go build that object. So I think that's a very exciting time, because that's sort of a combination of, what I've done before in the past. But 35 years ago, I remember, clicking on a puck to do a layout, and then taking an object and creating a bevel for it, and that was my 3D model of the Buffalo Sabres logo. And to come full fruition and say, this is an architectural space that we can visualize before you even break ground. And they're like, oh, that makes sense. Can you do that? That's an exciting time for me. So,
yeah,
I'm not going to retire yet.
No, not quite yet. Aaron, Steamroller is hiring on a regular basis, and you mentioned the growth of the company, which is great. Is there a challenge finding qualified applicants? And if so, what are the skills that you are typically working or looking for that you struggle to find?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, I think a lot of companies that do animation or visual effects, they tend to specialize in that one area. They build entire pipelines that are dedicated to excellence, either in feature animation or visual effects animation and live action in ingestion of plates and that sort of thing. For us at Steamroller, as I had mentioned before, we're working in every style and format of animation at any one time in the industry. So we have an incredibly diverse crew. We have about 115 full-time animators. We're one of the largest, animation departments, I think, in North America. And in that respect, because we carry so many different styles and formats with our clients, probably diversity of skill set for an animator is the most important thing for us. It's like a high value sort of target goal for us, which is, I came up in an industry where I never had the opportunity to do feature. I think the closest I got was Alvin and the Chipmunks, which was, probably the closest I got to Squash and Stretch. Otherwise I was a creature guy, just hardcore realistic creature animation. And so, I probably came up in the industry knowing 5 people who sort of had that kind of equal parts excellence in feature animation as well as in VFX. Those are the rare demo reels where you can see that kind of diversity of work. But for us, we're doing so many different styles in so many different areas that we've created internal training programs within our studio that upskills people in different styles gradually over the course of their career with us. That's extremely important because there's an ecosystem where we need to cast people to different types of show work and know that they can hit the ground running. So when we're looking at new applicants, a diversity of skill set and style, whether it's from motion capture to keyframe body performance, is really important for us. But we can't expect that of everybody. We have a lot of young talent that we bring into the company where obviously we want schools to focus them into a specific thing. We've seen a lot of poor school programs where they try and throw too much in a very short period of time at students, and they come out with sort of a very kind of average reel, in some cases below average. And so for us, the critical component for young talent is body mechanics. You have to be able to demonstrate that you understand weight, you understand anatomy, you understand the inertia and physics of the human body. At the core level, that is essential. And because we're an independently funded studio, we test in some cases. We will have a testing infrastructure where young talent will be invited to test with us, just so we can make sure that they understand those fundamentals, and that if we bring them in, they can hit the ground running. And then the only other area that I would probably say is a challenge for us is we've been building a new pipeline at Steamroller that is very much centered around real time, specifically Unreal Engine. And so for us, finding really talented artists that know how to work inside of Unreal. So people who understand lighting and can really, visually sculpt an image with us, but at the same time are technical and understand the ins and outs of Unreal Engine. That has been a bit of a challenge. They're somewhat unicorns right now out there, as we're seeing the industry sort of really shift around the real-time workflow. So
that makes sense.
Those are probably the two things. Yeah.
Good. Ron and Jason, when students come to you and say they want to pursue a career in visual effects or animation, do you find that they actually know what that really means, or have they just watched a lot of movies and think visual effects and animation is cool? How do you help them understand what it is that they're actually going to pursue? Ron, you go first.
Interestingly, and I'm on the admissions committee. I've been on the admissions in the admissions process several times over the last several years. I find that the young folks that come in, many of them are sort of visual effects savvy. They've been watching YouTube videos. They all know about Andrew Kramer and Video Copilot, and they've watched all of those After Effects tutorials. So they come in with sort of an intuitive understanding of how this thing works. My goal, obviously, then is to take them, since we're a very small program, kind of a conservatory model, is to take them and walk them through understanding how it integrates with the entire industry, and how to be a visual effects artist that understands the pipeline and where their part fits into the entire process. So even though we have not had a BFA specialization in visual effects over the last, I've been here 11 years, we've sent upwards of 40 students out into the industry who are all successfully working as visual effects artists in one way or another. And one of the things that employers tell us when we send our students to them is, my God, your guys actually understand how the business of visual effects works. Like, you understand how movies get made and what your role is. And so I think that's something that is unique in my experience, working with people that have graduated from other schools. And every film school has their own process, and one's not necessarily better than the other, but they're all different. And we've chosen to sort of work in this process where students actually understand their piece of the puzzle, but also how the whole puzzle works. And I think that's been really successful for us.
That's interesting. Jason, what are your thoughts on whether the students get to you? No.
Yeah, are they, when you're looking for, it all comes down to like what's motivating them. You get a ton of people and they'll send you their statement and be like, I've been watching animation since I was a kid, since I was 4. Well, I'm like, and that's great, that's awesome, but have you done anything with it? Like, so when someone comes to you and they say, hey, I'm really interested in animation and I've been studying it, I've been looking at it, I've been watching it, I've been watching movies all my life. It's like, you ever made a movie? And the difference between the fan and the maker is drive. And, if someone's got drive, they'll find a way to do it. Right. Even if they have no resources, right? Because there's so many, like when Chris and Aaron and Victor and I started, the internet didn't exist, man. So it's like YouTube. YouTube, there's so much power at the fingertips of young people. I saw a guy, a 16-year-old, did this thing in Blender that was mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing just the other day, right? So if there's drive. So for me, when I'm looking, when I'm on admissions and we're talking about students, the big one is drive. It's like, what do they want to do it? Because if they want to do it, everything else is easy, relatively. They end up asking you the questions. They're curious. And then it's like, it's like open book. Here, I want to figure this out. How do I do this? How do I do that? And then, like Ron said, it's about sculpting them so that they understand that the space that they're going to walk into, that everything from like soft skills to like, I cannot express how important soft skills are.
Mm-hmm.
Like being able to collaborate and know how to deal with, oh, you know, my cubby mate is kind of being a pain in the butt this week, like, but I still have to do this, or I've got a difficult supervisor, or I've got a director who maybe isn't as communicative as they need to be, but I still need to make this shot rock as an animator. What kind of questions would I ask? How do I pull that out of, you know, how do I engage in that space? And honestly, the only way for them to do that is for them to experience it. Yeah. Right. So putting them on projects with each other, getting them working with upperclassmen who've gone through it before, and just kind of working between classes. So, you know, is this making sense? So yeah, it's just when we're looking for people, the most important thing for me is drive. And I always ask them, it's like, okay, what's your favorite anime movie? You know, and then and the smart ones will ask me, well, what's your favorite anime movie? And I'll say Pinocchio. I'll say Pinocchio, right? Now I have to actually be specific, because although I absolutely love Del Toro's Pinocchio, but I would go back to Disney's original Pinocchio, and then they're like, well, why? I was like, have you watched those are planes, people. Those are cubes, right? The force, the technical ability, and then on top of that, all the performance and the story that's tied into is hard. That was so hard to do, yeah. You know, so hard to do. So for me, yeah, it's drive. It's all about drive. They have to want it, and sussing out.
That's great. That's great input. Okay, so we have like a few more questions on our list, but if people want to start raising their hands, I'm going to ask one more question, then we'll get to some of the audience questions. So Victor, you know, if I'm understanding correctly, you were not traditionally trained. So what type of continuing education or training do you do to stay on top of, you know, either to get into or to stay on top of your profession?
Sorry. No, sorry. Okay. On my case, well, I want to learn and, you know, to keep learning all the time. I'm trying to, you know, to communicate with everyone else, you know, in the industry. So I try to do a lot of networking. I'm a kind of the person that I love to communicate, you know, and I love to do networking no matter what. No matter, because when you communicate with each other, and sometimes you learn something new. No matter the experience you have, you can have 20 years experience, 1 year experience. No matter what, always you learn something. So that's the way. Always I trying to maintain myself, you know, in the loop, learning more stuff, and also learning sometime for websites. To be honest, for FX PhD as well, you know. And I always look the behind the scenes as well, you know, the movie, and sometimes when they explain or make some podcasts. I love the podcast a lot, you know, and I learn a lot about the podcast. So that's the way I try to maintain myself in the loop, you know, to learn more and more. Right now with the virtual production, for example, the virtual production is something is relatively new, I can say. So that's something that I've been learning more and more, and how to integrate, you know, Unreal, and how Unreal can be beneficial for using something in real time, maybe for the compositing process or 3D animation, you know. And that's something I always, you know, doing 24/7, you know, that because it's something I really love, you know, and I cannot sleep, to be honest. So this is something I cannot sleep, to be honest. I something that I am, you know, it's my real passion, you know. I born to be a visual effect, you know. I will die one day with visual effects. so that's something I really love. So no matter what, so yeah.
Chris, how about you? How have you stayed on top of the technological changes through your career?
I probably you know, online and stuff like that. I mean, when old guys like us, like back in the day, like I was relying like on Post magazine or Millimeter or whatever, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna go do that stuff. And ironically enough, I would mail through the mail, you know, letters to different people, like Steve Williams out in California, and you know, he took the time to write me back as a fledgling student. I mean, I wasn't really a student; I was working at the time, but like, I knew I wanted to be doing more than spinning logos in Western New York. So, you know, I physically would write. So I just go out and try and find information or volunteer my time on set. You know, I directed a live action feature here in town, and you know, I didn't really have a lot of experience directing at all, but I had all of the the experience in doing live action visual effects and animation and shot structures and things like that. So I was like, hey, did you guys know about shotguns? Do you guys know about this? Do you know? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, well, we're just doing it all to do a live action feature, micromanaged. So again, learn where you can learn anything. You know, I have a huge history in traditionally made films and film, but that applies to modern day techniques. The whole virtual production thing is huge, but we're doing that with motion control rigs in multiple passes, but we just happen to be doing film. So it's like you do one pass and then you take the camera out and you put your green screen in, or blue screen or green screen, either one, and then you do another pass and then you go take it to the film. So all of those techniques are now sort of a little easier, but you still have to have that basic knowledge. So but I always look out for individual people and stuff like that can compel me. I mean, I think I saw a student reel on the BES thing last year, because I vote on the BES, and I think it was like dropped sand like on a paper, and it was stop motion, and I'm like, oh my god, that's brilliant. And it took him probably maybe a year to do this, but it was like the structure and the mindset to be, that's animation, right? I mean, it has nothing to do with a character running around or $500,000 dinosaur, but so all of those things are out there, and with the internet and YouTube and how do you do these things? I mean, the particular task is important to know how to do, but again, what I do is I build pipelines for animators to animate, and lighters to light, and compositors to composite, and you know what I mean? Because you still have to departmentalize it, but it's nice to know the overarching, where are you going, sort of thing. I work my way backwards from whatever the delivery is. If it's a feature film, it's on the screen. Work your way backwards and build your pipeline. So stuff like that. So.
Good. Jamie, you have a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm gonna add you so people can see you, and go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks, John, for another wonderful program, and panelists, thank you for your time and expertise. I did send connection requests on LinkedIn because I'd love to still follow what you do after this. John, I don't know where to send this question, but I have a shopping agreement with my first animated feature, and it's currently at Nickelodeon, so I'm writing the script. And my question is there a difference between writing a live action script and an animated script?
Jason got excited there. So Jason, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I'll try. My initial answer is story is story. So that's true, right? But what's interesting is we have an MFA in writing program, right? And they focus on writing live action stuff. And my animators, I'm teaching them thinking about action and thinking about writing and how to write specifically visually. When you have an MFA who understands live action writing, walk into a BFA who understands animation writing, they actually aren't speaking the same language, which is really weird. They are story-wise, but what's I think like really powerful about, or for at least this is for me, is that there are things about scope in terms of understanding what you can do in animation or can't do. It's sort of like what Victor was saying earlier, like being a director who, having that post experience and understanding visual effects and then sitting down to actually direct it, you're like able to kind of interface with the crew or whatever you're doing a little bit easier or better. So when you take somebody who's used to writing in live action and they step into the animation world, are they aware of what they're asking? Are they aware of what's possible, or what isn't, or are they thinking in a way that is, again, subverting? Like, could you take your script that you wrote and shoot it with real people? And if so, then why is it animated? Like, the question I always ask every time we write is, why are you animating this story? what's the reason why it's animated? Because otherwise you might as well just go shoot it with a camera, right? Oh, well, I want it to look a certain way. I'm like, okay, the aesthetics are valid, but now why is the story this way? So writing, yeah, I think there's a difference. Now I wish the WGA would recognize animation writers a little bit better, and I wish the DGA would recognize animation directors as actual directors better. But that's coming. Sorry, Jamie, I don't know if I answered your question.
Anybody else have anything to add before we let Jamie go here?
Yeah, I have something to add. I mean, I think my favorite thing in Final Draft is the ability to split it out into shots. And so even though it's a rough draft or whatever, wherever your stage of story is, the story changes constantly. I mean, on Lilo, we took an entire sequence out, and this is post 9/11, and we had to rewrite it right before, and we still had the same release date. So the story constantly changes. But if you're breaking down your story, and it's more in the beginning of Final Draft when you go through and describe what you're seeing, right? If you were to quickly storyboard those little sequences and then understand the complexity of, why would I animate this? Do I want to use the same background? Do I want to do like pan and scan like old Disney stuff and just write a big huge thing and not see Fred Flintstone on the same car? So stuff like that, visually think in your head as a director, what you want to see, where your characters are. If it values, being an animated piece, then do it animated, and break out little individual things, and you're going to do this anyway based on funding, right? They'll give you a little bit of seed money to do a visual book, right? And you'll break out one scene maybe and animate that, but you'll book everything. You'll get a color palette, and you want to stick with that color palette. So it is acting. Absolutely. You're just having to animate a little character, or you're going to animate a background, or you're going to animate visual effects. I mean, animation is a lot more detailed and a lot. I think it's a little bit. It's probably a lot more expensive for sure, because of the visual development that has to happen, and because of the believability that has to happen. So but yeah, good luck. That'd be interesting. So, thank you.
John, can I jump on that real quick?
Yeah,
please.
We don't get anything for free. We get nothing for free. So it's like when you write, like you're writing visually, right? It's like they have a fight, right? Oh no. So Chris is right on the money, like having that, if you can describe in that script, like as the writer, you can have a lot of power. Whereas, so you can really sculpt visually what things are looking like if you're using the words, a certain way. And so I don't, I traditionally writing something for live action, I might let some of that stuff go. But as an animator, I'm writing stuff into it. And like half the time I write visual, I'll board my scene out.
I mean, and in live action, you settle. Right? It's like, that'll work, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. In animation, it's like you're doing exactly what the written word says. So that's why it takes time. Right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Excellent input. And Jamie is a Film Florida member and a novelist and a screenwriter, and was a recent guest on the Film Florida podcast. So everybody go take a listen to her episode because it was a lot of fun. Okay. So John, I see your hand is up. If you want to turn on your camera, I can add your spotlight and come on down so everybody can see, and go ahead and ask your question.
Hello. I want to thank everyone who's here for their time. I really appreciate all the things you've been said. It's been super informative. I'm a student filmmaker. I study at UCF, and I like to work a lot in like sci-fi and fantasy settings. So even though my major primarily works in live action, I found that a lot of my ideas, I want to like work with animators to bring like fantastical backgrounds to life and stuff like that. So in my college, there's not a whole lot of easy connectivity between like the film stuff and the art schools and the acting schools, etc. What are some good ways that I can interest student animators in my project? Like, what can I make available to interest them? And then once they are interested in working with me, what are some good ways that I can work with them so that we both learn and benefit from the experience?
Who wants that one? Any of our panelists, just unmute and go ahead.
But I mean, you could start by seeing if they want to do boards for you, right? And again, everything starts with a picture. So you could write something that's very fantastical, but that written word needs to be visually presented in a way, because because there's a lot of things that you can read, and I would go somewhere different and you're going to go somewhere different until you actually define that, and hand it to somebody that has a common admiration for sci-fi, and maybe you have a commonality visually for that, and then that would lead into maybe him connecting you to, or him or her to connecting you to other visual effects people that are good illustrators and painters and stuff like that. So, or go out and shoot reference of stuff, and this is what I want it to look like, or find reference online. I mean, Google is like crazy with all kinds of stuff. And back in the day, I would have to just go out and shoot reference. It's like, yeah, I want this texture to look like this, and I'd take a camera out and shoot it, and then I'd actually cheat and take it off with a piece of film and use it as a texture map. So.
Yeah, some kind of, usually it's the pitch, which you're talking. You have to think about it like I guess the best way to think about it is think about it like dating, right? You got to, in a weird way, you have to kind of you have to make it flashy. You have to, so that you can actually get to the substance, right? You want both. And so you need this sexy key art. You need, find yourself a good illustrator, find yourself a great, huh? I'm sorry, Chris.
No, I had to mute it. I was laughing.
I'm sorry. I mean, you're looking for, because if you yourself, you're a storyteller, you're a writer, you're a filmmaker, you do think visually, but if you're not a traditional artist, or if you don't have strong drawing skills or things like that, partnering with somebody who can do that, which that person then ends up possibly becoming like a production designer on the piece, on the show, right? I mean, so finding yourself a strong designer who can help build those kinds of things is in my opinion your first step. Absolutely. And then, as far as learning more about that process, once you have a partner like that, then it becomes like, hey, what can be possible? Like some of the stuff you're talking about is virtual production, dude. I mean, straight up, you just need you need a television and a camera, right? You need a base LED wall and a camera. You need a green screen and a camera. There's a lot you can do with a simple green screen backdrop and a camera. There's a ton that can be done. And there's plenty of online tutorials and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's programs as well, right? And if you want to go down that route, those are being built as we speak. So that's
excellent. Thank you very much, John. And so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'm going to actually combine our last two questions for our panelists into one. So we're going to go around the entire grid. So just kind of rapid fire on the future of visual effects and/or animation, and then plug whatever you need to plug, websites, contact info, social media. Aaron, go ahead and you start.
So for us, we see the future of animation as being in a real-time space. I think a lot of people see that as well, but real-time has largely been a virtual production sort of concept. I mean, even on Avatar, we were using cameras on stage to pre-visualize in 3D in real time what those scenes would look like. That's what Jim was doing on the stage. What we're seeing is the entire post-production process having a real-time component to it, from storyboarding, which is very exciting for us. We think that storyboarding will be in Unreal and is something that we should be having a real commitment to. We're already doing animation in Unreal at a very high quality. This is very much a new frontier for us, and it is painful, to be perfectly honest. As is often the case with any sort of new developments in software like that. You've got Maya that's been around for ages that we're all used to animating in, and with that comes just hundreds of tools that animators have become very comfortable with. And now in Unreal, the value of animating in a real-time environment is it's so obvious, it's so clear to everybody that moving away from a linear workflow into a nonlinear collaborative workflow where there's a dialogue happening between the departments that used to never really be able to talk to each other until things broke and you had to go back and rework it again before you passed it on, that sort of linear data model. Real time is so powerful because things are faster and the creative collaborative process is more apparent. But it is very difficult right now to animate at feature level quality in Unreal. So luckily on Spice Frontier, we've had an opportunity via our mega grant to be able to do some of that work. But we're really seeing the entire post-production process and the animation creation process being in a real-time environment. And then of course, you know, listen, we could probably have a whole 5 hours of conversation around AI and machine learning and where all of that is going. We've obviously seen wonderful things in machine learning, from, you know, Thanos to the Avatar facial system for Avatar 2, which also had an AI component to it as well. So I'd probably say those are sort of 2 or 3 things that I think are fundamental to how we're going to start doing animation in the future.
And what do you got to plug?
What do I have to plug? Spice Frontier. So, hey, if anybody knows distributors, investors, and wants to make an entire season 1, we have committed to fund the pilot episode, which will be done in April. We've been working on it for almost 3 years. It is absolutely gorgeous, and it is done in Unreal and really moves Unreal away from the out-of-the-box realism that we all know it for and starts to take us into a 2D sort of visual style, but everything is in 3D. And of course, if we don't get the season off the ground, then we will stop at pilot episode 1 and move on to the next IP. So if you know anybody and you want to check it out, just give me a call and we can talk.
And where can people find more about Steamroller?
Steamroller. So we have a wonderful website that you should check out. There's been a series of production diaries that we've done showing the behind the scenes creation of Spice Frontier, a lot about Unreal in there, and a lot of showing of our staff and the incredible talent that we have behind that project. And then of course, yeah, you can check out our YouTube. We've got a fantastic studio demo reel that shows our work across the industry. And yeah, our website is probably the key place to go check it out.
Which is?
Steamrollerstudios.com.
There you go. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Jason, give us a sense of the future and what do you want to plug?
The future. The elephant in the room is AI. That's the elephant in the room. Aaron nailed that. Right now it's real time. We made the commitment in the animation program to jump over to Unreal. We've been doing it. We're on our 3rd production cycle now. 3rd or 4th production cycle. And that's, Aaron's right. It's awesome, but it's a pain in the, it's a learning experience. It's a pain in the butt. But it's literally changed. It changes how we teach animation, even down to the fact that, you know, when you're thinking about blocking, you know, I can actually have something in real time. I can block in real time, think about cameras in real time and change the lenses it out in real time. Interactively with my light, it's a whole nother game. You know, even if I'm trying to teach live action students something as simple as okay, here's the 180-degree rule. All right, well, I can show them a bunch of clips from Vertigo, right, which I do, but now imagine if we had the scene, if I just recreated the scene in Unreal and said, okay, now you reshoot it, you're Hitchcock, here's the blocking, think about the camera moves, right? And they can do that right there. And explore and experiment. There's a lot of iterative power with it from an educational standpoint. In terms of, I actually think we're going to go past, I guess, screens. I'm a big proponent of AR, XR, interactive experiences. I think that animation is going to be constantly around us. I think that this that we're doing right now is going to be gone in 10 years. I think it's all going to be glasses or contacts or, God help us, a Neuralink from Elon Musk. Who knows? I don't really think I want to cut a chip in my head, but I do think that that kind of thing is right around the corner, man. It's not it's not a thing of future. We will see it in our lifetimes, and that's going to change everything. Like from a filmmaking standpoint, where we sit and we watch in the theater or watch on the TV with friends, to experiential. So like the stuff that Chris has been working on and doing, right? Like where this idea of experiential design, like that story's always going to be there, but now how are you taking part? I'm going to walk into a bank with my AR glasses on and I'm going to participate in a virtual like bank robbery. Oh, there it is. I'm going to, or it's, you know, it's like, what the hell? Or I'm in a restaurant. Oh, okay, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to have Al Capone sitting next to me. Okay, awesome, right? Like, I mean, so there's, that all sounds kind of nuts and crazy, but they're doing it. Now it's just about getting the technology to be able to display it small enough. So like that stuff's there, man. And it's like, that to me is pretty cool. And I think AI is going to be part of that, but they've got to get some legal stuff on that, because ethically right now, that's a complete crazy storm.
Yeah.
So plugs, you can find me on Twitter, Teller of Stories, at Teller of Stories, if you're so inclined. You're welcome to email me, jmaurer@fsu.edu. And you can find out more about what we're doing at FSU Film, which is fsu.film.edu. I will make a quick plug on the MFA program, virtual production. We've got a wall, we've got a thing, we've got specialists. We're doing it, baby, like everybody else, but we're doing it in Florida. So, and it's cool. It's really, really, really cool. We've already had 3 cycles run through it, so we're getting there, man. We're building a solid program for it. So if you're interested, let us know.
Chris, rapid fire on the future, and then plug anything you want people to know about you.
I think the future, with Aaron and Jason just said, that the whole virtual production stuff, I agree with it. And when you're using Unreal, it's no longer a linear pipeline. It's constantly rolling, right? And it just depends on when you want to go and see that. So I go, and so that methodology is kind of cumbersome for a lot of studios, because they don't know where to book this. You know,
That's right.
Who do we hire? You know, do we hire people that know the components, or do we hire people that know how to build the arc that kind of just keeps going? And that happens a lot, especially from what I'm doing now. Again, and you know, Jason, that part of that creeps me out as well, as far as the AI part, because not to, you know, bruise any of my NDAs and stuff like that. It's already here. It's all in the private sector. So eventually that technology, especially for DoD stuff, it will come out eventually, and you'll be able to, you know, have contacts or have a visor that, you know, you can fly next to a MiG. How about that? So, I mean, there are companies that currently do that. But you know, I'm more interested in the entertainment sake, not necessarily the vaporize a human target from space thing. So I would rather do entertainment for entertainment's sake, and you know, help people through that. But I really enjoy the theme park stuff, because again, you're a lasting entertainer for 10 to 12 years until they get tired of it, or until, you know, they want to bring back Men in Black or something like that. So all of those things are coming into play. And even though, you know, I was, you know, a kid in my dad's basement projecting things and selling tickets for 10 cents and, you know what I mean, on 35mm film, I'm still entertaining people now.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really matter, you know, the space is just changing, and I've sort of adapted to that. It's just become a lot easier to do those things. I don't necessarily have any plugs. I don't know. I'm currently talking to a couple of companies right now, and I think IAPA was pretty eye-opening and stuff like that. So I don't know if everybody knows, but there was a big convention here in town called IAPA. And, I think, you know, John and Bob Allen know about those. So, and again, there were some that Ideas is now doing too as well. So
yep,
I have to reach out to Bob. So
yep.
Anyway, but yeah, you can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm always open to talk to people. So thanks.
Good, Victor. A quick one on the future, and then anything you want to plug.
Yeah. First of all, try to learn as much as you can, you know, for the visual production, because of the features. Because then you can be prepared for that moment when everything's changed, you know, with animation, combination, everything else. Also, I want to take 2 points for the request about the AI. I don't supports too much AI in this case, because I'm more like an old school to, create everything from scratch. And other thing is, do not freak out, because AI will not replace the artist. So AI only is a tool that you need to sometimes use it to create something. When you have something like a repeat, when you need to repeat the same thing, you can use AI, to speed up the process, but it's not something that you're gonna replace the artist. The other thing is about try to learn more about that, and be passionate, industry. I know sometimes it's going down like that a lot, but the writer's strike sometimes it's much better. Another thing about the writer's strike, SAG-AFTRA, very quick. The AI, we don't use AI for the actors, So when we need to create an actor, everything is from scratch, we need to create the 3D modeling, the scan, the pictures, but the crowd is not AI. A crowd is software that sometimes we use Houdini, or we use other kind of software to create that. So don't freak out about that. So we don't use the AI for the actors. That's something that everyone is speaking out, around about that. So it's not true. So and about my plug is follow me on LinkedIn to follow my career, follow my journey, and always I'll be able to work with everyone as a visual effects supervisor, or comp supervisor, anything else. So because I really love it. And my personal website is www.victorbRivas.com. It's very easy, and that's it.
Perfect. Ron, wrapping up with you.
I joke with my students that the development of AI is going to turn us all into heating and air conditioning technicians as we find our new career. But of course, really what AI is doing for us is it's taking a lot of the tedium out of these processes. If you think of the copycat technology built into Nuke, for example, that's basically simplifying the tedious process of rotoscoping, for example. There's also, I don't know if you get a chance to check out Wonder Dynamics. That's a software package that is basically building in tracking and motion tracking, as well as camera match moving and clean plating and all of these processes. So with all of that, it's still going to require an artist, an eye, to be able to tell the story and to define what that looks like. So I think that's the good news. As far as plugging anything, you can reach me at rhon@fsu.edu if anybody has any questions regarding visual effects or our program. And then finally, I just want to plug filmflorida.org. I hope the viewers have enjoyed this as much as I have, because it's been wonderful to be in the company of all of these old geniuses that have, we've been doing this a long time, and what a privilege to be witnesses to an amazing time in history for all of us to, fumble through this new technology and however we got here. And I just can't say enough what a wonderful opportunity this has been. So thank you, John, for this. Really appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Thank you, Ron. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Jonathan Stone, who is not with us, but referred Ron and Jason to us to make sure we had great panelists. So that's going to wrap up. That will wrap up another edition of Film Florida Friday. Thanks to our amazing panelists for being with us. And thank you all for joining us today. Once again, thanks to Katie Collins for helping me wrangle and prepare for Film Florida Friday each month. We're going to be back next month with another edition. We're going to talk about character voice artists. So that'll be fun. Be on the lookout for that information. I put it in the chat box, as well as we'll do some social media and email blasts. As always, thanks to our Film Florida members for their continued support. If you're not a member of Film Florida, we hope you will consider joining the organization at filmflorida.org. Keep up on everything we're doing on our social media pages, Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and now Threads as well. And make sure you check out the Film Florida podcast, which is available on most major podcast outlets. So be sure you subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Thanks again for being here. Have a great day, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Right.
Good job, John Lux.
Good
job.